Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred We Died Laughing and I'm here with a wrap up. So this is going up a little bit late, but I'm going to do my wrap up for the first week in January, and then in a couple of days you're going to get my wrap up for the second week in January, and then I'll have all my favourites, least favourites, all those kind of things up next week as well. I've just been having a hard time with filming in my other house, which is where I've been spending a lot of time lately. Obviously not really here, and when I've been here I haven't had much time to film, and there's just something about not filming in front of my bookshelves that I don't really like. So I'm going to try and make a big effort this year to try and do as much pre-filming as I can while I'm at home in my mum and dad's, and I have my bookshelf, this kind of bookshelf behind me. So yeah, I have 7 books to talk about in this video, so I'm going to go straight on into it and let you know the first book I finished this year. And this is a book where actually the majority of it I actually read in 2018 because it was an audiobook. This is The Last Brother by Andrew Gross. I will leave the narrator down below. I just don't have that name in front of me at the moment. This is a book set in kind of 1930s New York, and it is about these 3 brothers who have all grown up kind of, you know, they were all growing up a little bit poor, and then one of the brothers, when he was young, when he was a teenager, he got into this, like, the garment making factory business, and he decided to make his own garment making business, and he's kind of grown up. He's grown this business and it's becoming quite successful, but the third brother is actually friendly with these mob people who are making life very, very difficult for factory workers and factory owners, and there's this kind of tension between the brothers and the mob people, and they are not people who, the brother Morris, who is kind of the main character in this, he's not someone who likes bullies, he's not someone who stands down very easily, and he ends up kind of standing up to the mob, and a lot of things happen. This is a book that like spans a few years, and I found it quite good. I found it really enjoyable for an audiobook read. I don't know how exciting it would have been maybe for because like there were some bits that were quite violent and quite gory, and there were some bits when I was listening to it I was going, oh, like, you know, they're not something that like you really want to be thinking about. But for a book that is also like that is about a mob, I think it wasn't as violent or as action packed as it could have been. The characters were shaped in this, really kind of like invested me in the story, because I did find myself really invested in the characters and the character safety. And obviously it's a mob, so like it's a mob story, so you never really know if someone's just going to get like gunned down out of nowhere. There were some bits in this that were very, you know, high stakes, lives were on the line, and yeah, it did make me feel like, you know, I couldn't really, like, I didn't want to like put it down. I wanted to keep on listening, so I did quite enjoy this, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I do really recommend it for an audiobook read as well. The narrator was really good, and as I said, I will leave that narrator down below. The next book I finished was Wind Witch by Susan Dennard. I'm not sure how many books are going to be in this series, but I do know Blood Witch is coming out really soon, which is the 3rd book. So Wind Witch follows on with a couple of characters, obviously, that we met in Truth Witch. We're in land, fantasy land, where people can be born with these specific powers, like you can be a wind witch, you could be a water witch, all these different types of witches. The first book follows Truth Witch, which follows one character who's able to tell when people are saying the truth or if they're lying, and it's a really rare kind of power. This book we're following a man called Merrick who did appear in the first book, and he's a wind witch, so he obviously can control the wind. Just following his kind of side of things, he's from a kind of a different country than characters in the first book, where there is kind of a war brewing between a lot of different countries and a lot of different factions in this world, and things are kind of coming to a head in this book. I did enjoy this one as much as I thought I would. I really, really enjoyed Truth Witch, and I really loved Merrick in Truth Witch, so I thought I was going to really, really enjoy this one because it obviously is mostly focused on Merrick. But I kind of felt it had been a while since I'd read Truth Witch, and I couldn't really remember everything that had happened in it, and I did read one of those kind of Spark Note flashback things where it kind of detailed what had happened. But even with that, I kind of felt things that happened at the start of Wind Witch didn't happen at the end of Truth Witch. There seemed to be this period of time between the two of them where things happened, and you know, we were just expected to kind of go along with it at the start of this book, and it just really kind of confused me, and I kind of felt like I was just always a little bit behind for some reason. When I didn't become invested in the story, and I kind of felt myself distancing myself from the characters because I didn't feel invested in their story anymore. In saying that, I do really want to read Sight Witch, which is kind of a novella book. I think it's like 2.5 in the series. I want to read that, and I will definitely be reading Blood Witch. But yeah, I just found myself really underwhelmed by this book, and I just wasn't invested in the story, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I read a novella in the This Mortal Coil trilogy, and that was These Precious Scars. It's kind of like 1.5, and it's actually a free ebook on Amazon because for your Kindle, because like it's only like 20 pages or something. It's not very long at all. and it basically follows just a few characters that we learn about in this mortal coil, and we're following them at a specific point in time, like that happened years before the events of this mortal coil, but we're finding out a little bit more, just like these glimpses of these characters and what they went through and before we knew them. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed just this like glimpse into these characters' lives, something that we'd only heard about, and I actually would have even loved this to have been longer, because I did really enjoy reading from each character's point of view and just what their lives were like, what they were like as younger children, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars, which is basically like a 5 out of 5 stars for a novella. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it did really bring something for me into this trilogy. Then I read a book that's been on my shelf for a very long time, that is Stitching Snow by R.C. Lewis. I read Spinning Starlight about 2 years ago, I think, by R.C. Lewis, which I think was one I got off NetGalley at the time, and I loved that one so much that I went and bought this one from Book Depository, which is Stitching Snow, which is her debut novel, and then I never read it, so I was just, I don't know, it was calling out to me, and I decided to pick it up and finally read it, and it's really interesting, and I think a lot of people will quite enjoy this. And I think this would be a really good one for actually people who are into the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Mayer, because it's a little bit similar in that this is a kind of sci-fi retelling of Snow White, and this is about a girl called Essie who is living in this kind of planet, this kind of mining planet, and she just she's basically just living by herself. She, you know, doesn't have many friends. She's living in this very remote mining planet that's really rough, just full of all these like really, like, you know, tough talking, drinking miners, and her only friends basically are these 7 droids that she has programmed, and they all have their own little personalities, and they all look after her a little bit and she looks after them, and it's like, it's really cute. It's like this really nice little friendship she has with these 7 droids, and I was actually surprised by how quickly I became attached to the 7 droids as well. So Essie thinks that she's grand just being on her own, and then this guy around the same age as her crash lands on the planet, and she helps him out, but then he ends up kidnapping her, and it turns out that she is the lost princess, Snow White, and he basically thinks that she's been kidnapped, and then she has just been left here on this planet, where she's like, actually no, I wasn't kidnapped, I had to run away because my life was in danger. And she ends up getting involved in this rebellion against her father, who is the king, and she's obviously like, this is obviously a sci-fi techie kind of book, so Essie is actually like this really good kind of like software developer and coder, and she's like really clever with all these kind of technological things, and she ends up kind of becoming like getting into this rebellion, and she's going to lead the charge basically in taking her planet back from her father, and you know, because he is corrupt and he's not a very good leader, and yeah, things kind of go from there, and there's obviously a little bit of romance, there's some action. I did quite enjoy this. I definitely enjoyed Spinning Starlight better. I think her writing has improved a little bit since in between the two of them. I could see kind of weak points in this where I hadn't seen them in Spinning Starlight. I think I was more invested in that story. I liked that story better. I thought the romance in this was like, it wasn't really like insta love, but at the same time, like, there was never any shocks or twists and turns in this. I feel like this was a very straightforward book where you kind of more or less knew a lot of things that were happening. Some of the bad people in it were just like, you know, they were just too obvious, I think. I think the end of it was a little bit, everything kind of happened. It was a little bit of an anticlimax, I think, the end of it. And yeah, I just felt a little bit like, oh, okay. But yeah, like, it wasn't a bad book. I did enjoy it. I don't know if she's writing any more kind of sci-fi retellings of fairy tales, because I would actually love more, because I do think she's really good at them. Like, this is a very unique book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and yeah, I do recommend it. My first NetGalley book in the first week of January as well, that was When All Is Said by Anne Griffin. This is a book about, set in Ireland by an Irish author. It is about an old man called Morris who is basically sitting at this pub, and he's basically like just telling his life story over these 5 different drinks, and the 5 different drinks kind of represent 5 different people in his life that had a big like impact in his life. So he's talking about his brother, his wife, his daughter who died as a baby, like just all these different people, and you're kind of getting the story of his life through these like 5 drinks and these 5 stories, and it's basically like an old man in a pub just talking to himself, because he's not a particularly like nice character. Like, this is a very interesting book because I didn't like him. I didn't like Morris for like a good 50-60% of the book, and I was like, this man is just a crotchety old shite. Like, he is just like, you know, like, he's just one of those like arsehole farmers who just like wants like land. Like he has this grudge against these people who he'd worked for when he was a boy, who owned all the land around him, who were not very nice people, and he's held this grudge for like his entire life. But then the more you kind of learn about his story, the more you're kind of like, he's a shite, but like he's a nice shite, you know, like you just end up kind of liking him for who he is, and you do end up getting a little bit of an appreciation for him by the end of his stories. So I did quite enjoy this. I did enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but he did warm up to me a lot. It reminded me a little bit of A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik Backman, in that it's like this old man talking about his life who's just like a really cranky old man, really grumpy, but you still end up like kind of just really rooting for him, and some of the things that like what Uwe was going through, Morris is going through as well, in terms of grief and loss and stuff like that, and dealing with that. I'm not sure if the end of this book a lot of people would agree with or would be happy with. I kind of felt like I would have liked a little bit more of a surprise thing at the end, I think. There was this side story in this as well, this like side plot about this coin that he took when he was a boy, and it kind of felt like this like coin was like this really big thing, but actually wasn't, and I feel like it took away from the actual story a little bit of Morris's life story, and this whole thing about this lost coin was just like a bit of nothing, and I didn't really care about it at all. So I think that actually could have been left out altogether. But yeah, I was just a bit like whatever about it. So yeah, I gave this like a 3.5 I think out of 5 stars. So that I actually read Macbeth by William Shakespeare, because I went to see Macbeth last night with my boyfriend. There was like a production on of it in Dublin, and he got it for me for Christmas, and we went last night, and I obviously I'm kind of someone, I want to know the story before I go into it, so I made sure I had read Macbeth and that I understood Macbeth, and I did the same thing with this as I did with Hamlet when I went to see Hamlet last year, which is I read it along on my phone while I listened to an audio production of it on YouTube, like just like a free one on YouTube that I found. And I find this a really, really nice way of taking in Shakespeare and understanding Shakespeare, so I know kind of the tones and the emotions in the scenes, and I know what people are feeling by listening to how they speak the script, obviously. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The production of it was really, really good as well. Yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I really, really enjoyed it. It was quite dark and quite like gruesome, but it was good. It was Shakespeare like. And then my last book from the first week of January, more or less, was Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. I have not read Night Villain by Marisha Pessl, which is what she's known best for. So I don't know if this could, like, you know, I kind of went into this with absolutely zero expectations. And yeah, I actually quite enjoyed this book. I read it more or less in one sitting, like I read it all in one evening. A girl called Bee who is grieving over her boyfriend who died a year earlier, and she's kind of like completely distanced herself from her friends who she hung around with when she was going out with her boyfriend. They all went to this boarding school. She has since, you know, graduated and gone to, she's like doing her first year of college, but she doesn't talk to basically anyone that she used to hang around with anymore, and she's been going through a really, really tough time of grieving for her boyfriend. And then she ends up going back and meeting up with these friends again for one of the girls' birthdays, I think it is, and they all end up going out for like a night out. Things are a bit weird, but they're not terrible. But then the end of the night, they have like a near miss with like a truck or something when they're on the way back to the girl's house. And then when they're at the house, this person shows up, this really weird person shows up and basically tells them that they've all actually died in that accident. That wasn't a near miss accident, that actually was an accident, and they're all actually dead, and now they're in this place called Neverworld Wake, which is kind of like a purgatory, and they all have to vote about which one of them gets to live and which 4 of them will die. So they're kind of going through all of this. They're all trying to figure out, like, you know, who they should vote for. Like, they all obviously want to vote for themselves, but they can't do that. And then what happens is they end up trying to decide, level before they do their vote, they're going to figure out what happened to their friend, who was Bee's boyfriend, who died, because his death is a little bit of a mystery, and they all want to figure out what actually happened to him. So they use this time in this purgatory, in this like kind of Groundhog Day-esque purgatory, where they're repeating the same day over and over again. They're going to use that time to figure out what happened to their friend, and at the end of that, then they will vote once they figure out what has happened to him. So I did really enjoy this. I found it very addicting. As I said, I read it more or less in one sitting, all in one night. I think none of the characters are particularly likable. This is kind of basically, like, it is basically Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day meets like Gossip Girl, basically, because they're all kind of rich and preppy. I just thought the mystery element of it was quite well done. I did enjoy this. I actually don't have that much like to say about this, except that I liked it, and yeah, that I just enjoyed it, and I gave it I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. I'll definitely be reading Night Film. I think maybe I like this because I feel like some people have been disappointed in this book after they read Night Film, but because I've never read Night Film, I had no expectations going into this book, so I ended up really enjoying it. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars, and I recommend it. I quite enjoyed it. So that is everything that I've read. Oh my god, this wrap up has been going on for like 20 minutes. So yeah, that's everything I've read in the first week of January, and I'll have my wrap up for the next week in a few days. You'll see that too, and you'll be getting tired of seeing my face because I will be doing so much pre-filming and putting up so many videos that yeah, you're gonna be sick of me. So I'll see you guys next time. Please leave a comment down below if you've read any of these books or what books you've been reading for the start of the year, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.